The council chamber was older than most civilizations. Its walls curved upward into a dome that seemed to stretch into infinity, covered with symbols from 1,000 different species. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered here to discuss trade, settle disputes, and make decisions that affected trillions of lives. But the most striking feature of the chamber was not its size or age, it was the throne. The throne sat at the center of the room, raised on a platform that glowed with a soft blue light. It was carved from a material that no one could identify. Scientists had tried for thousands of years to determine what it was made from, but every test came back with different results. Sometimes it seemed to be stone, sometimes metal, sometimes something else entirely. The throne had been there longer than the council itself. When the first species discovered this place and decided to build their government here, the throne was already waiting. Ancient, silent, empty, and it had remained empty ever since. Not because no one wanted to sit in it. Many had tried. Warriors from the Krell Empire, whose soldiers could bend steel with their bare hands, had approached the throne with confidence. They made it 5 steps before collapsing in terror, screaming about shadows that ate their souls. The hive mind of Sector 7, a collective consciousness of billions, had sent their bravest champion. She made it 7 steps before the hive mind itself began to fracture, causing chaos across 3 solar systems. Even the synthetics, artificial beings who claimed to have no emotion or fear, had attempted the approach. Their representative simply stopped functioning at 9 steps, its systems permanently offline despite having no physical damage. After centuries of failures, the council had made a rule. The throne was forbidden. No one was allowed within 20 meters of it. It became a reminder of the limits of galactic civilization, a symbol of mysteries that even the most advanced species could not solve. The space around the throne was called Sector 3 Terra on star maps. Most species avoided it. Ships that traveled through that region reported strange sensor readings and unsettling dreams. A few colonies had been attempted there long ago, but all were abandoned. The sector had a reputation for being cursed. Captain Ji-hoon Park knew none of this when he entered the council chamber. Ji-hoon was the first human to ever stand in this room. His species had only developed faster than light travel 3 years ago, and the galaxy was still getting used to the idea of humans. He wore the dark blue uniform of the Earth Exploration Fleet, and his black hair was cut short in military style. At 35 years old, he was considered young for a starship captain, but humanity was too new to space to worry much about seniority. He had been invited to the council as an observer, while humanity's application for membership was being processed. It was supposed to be a simple visit, learn the procedures, meet some aliens, report back to Earth, but things rarely went as planned. "Captain Park," said the Vryn ambassador, a tall insectoid being with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected the chamber's light. "We are pleased to have you here. Before the session begins, perhaps you would like to know about our structure and territories?" "Yes, thank you," Ji-hoon replied in English. His words were instantly translated by the device attached to his collar. "I would appreciate any information you can share." The Vryn pulled up a holographic star map that filled half the chamber. Hundreds of systems glowed in different colors, marking the territories of various species and alliances. "The Council manages trade and diplomacy across 17 sectors," the Vryn explained. "Each color represents a different governing body. Blue is the Krell Empire. Green is the Tal Federation. Red is the Synthetic Collective. And this gray area here," the Vryn gestured to a large empty space on the map, "is Sector 3, Terra. It is forbidden territory." Ji-hoon studied the map carefully. His training had taught him to memorize spatial relationships quickly. He compared the map to his own knowledge of Earth's location in the galaxy. "Excuse me," he said slowly, "but I think there might be an error in your map." "An error?" The Vryn's antennae twitched with curiosity. "Yes. According to our calculations, Earth, my home world, is located right about." Ji-hoon reached forward and pointed to a spot in the gray forbidden zone. "Here." Inside Sector 3 Terra, the chamber fell completely silent. Every ambassador in the room turned to look at Ji-hoon. The Vrin's compound eyes went dark with shock. A tall diplomat made a choking sound. Even the synthetic representative, who rarely showed any reaction, stood up from its seat. "That is impossible," whispered an elderly ambassador from the back of the room. This was Shard of Memory, a crystalline being who was said to be over 10,000 years old. His voice sounded like wind chimes. "No intelligent life has ever evolved in Sector 3 Terra. We have monitored that region for millions of years. Thanks for watching. Things Hall 22 please. We're in life." "Well, we evolved there," Ji-hoon said, feeling confused by the reaction. "We have detailed records of our evolution. We have fossils and genetic evidence going back millions of years on Earth." Shard of Memory floated forward, his crystalline body refracting light into rainbow patterns on the floor. "Young human, do you understand what this means? Do you know why that sector is forbidden?" "No," Ji-hoon admitted. "We only learned we weren't alone in the universe 3 years ago. We don't know much about galactic history yet." "Then you do not know about the throne," Shard of Memory said quietly. He gestured toward the center of the chamber, to the ancient seat that sat in its pool of blue light. Ji-hoon looked at it properly for the first time. "It's impressive," he said. "Who does it belong to?" "We do not know. It was here before any of us. Before the Council. Before recorded history. But we know where it came from." Shard of Memory's voice grew softer. "It came from Sector 3 Terra. From the place you call Earth." Ji-hoon felt a chill run down his spine. "What?" "The throne was built by a species we call the Architects," Shard of Memory continued. "They were the first great civilization. They built wonders across the galaxy. And then, millions of years ago, they vanished. All we have left are their ruins. And this throne, but if they disappeared millions of years ago," Ji-hoon said slowly, "then they couldn't have been human. Humans have only been around for a few 100,000 years." "Exactly," Shard of Memory replied. "Which raises a very important question. Why did an intelligent species evolve on the Architect's homeworld after they disappeared? This has never happened before. Every other Architect world is dead or empty." Before Ji-hoon could respond, the main doors of the chamber opened. Ambassador Keiko Tanaka entered, followed by her delegation. She was a woman in her 50s with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun. She had been a diplomat on Earth for 20 years before volunteering to represent humanity to the galaxy. "My apologies for being late," Keiko said with a slight bow. "I hope we haven't missed anything important." "On the contrary," Shard of Memory said. "You have arrived at a crucial moment. Ambassador Tanaka, humanity's application for council membership must now undergo an additional requirement." Keiko's expression remained calm, but Ji-hoon could see tension in her shoulders. "What requirement?" Shard of Memory gestured toward the throne. "The throne test. Every species that has tried to join the council has been tested by approaching the throne. All have failed, but humans come from the Architect's homeworld. Perhaps you will be different. And if we fail?" Keiko asked quietly. "Then humanity will be barred from colonizing beyond your solar system. The Council cannot risk allowing a species from Sector 3 Terra to spread if they fail the test." "And if we succeed?" Shard of Memory's crystalline body chimed softly. "No one has ever succeeded, Ambassador. We do not know what will happen. But perhaps it is time we found out." Keiko looked at the throne, then at Ji-hoon, then back at the ancient being before her. She took a deep breath. "Very well," she said. "I will take your test." The council chamber prepared for the test with an efficiency that spoke of ancient ritual. Technicians from a dozen different species set up monitoring equipment around the throne. Cameras were positioned to broadcast the event across the galaxy. Medical teams stood ready with equipment Ji-hoon did not recognize. Keiko stood calmly near the entrance while the preparations continued. She had removed her formal jacket and now wore only a simple white shirt and dark pants. Ji-hoon approached her, keeping his voice low. "Ambassador, you don't have to do this," he said. "We can refuse the test. Find another way." Keiko smiled slightly. "And give up humanity's chance to join the galactic community? Condemn us to our single solar system forever? To represent humanity when difficult choices must be made. But what if I fail?" Keiko interrupted gently. "Then I fail. But at least we will know." She looked at the throne, her dark eyes steady. "Besides, I am curious. Something about this feels right, like coming home after a long journey." Before Ji-hoon could respond, shard of memory floated over to them. The ancient crystalline being seemed to glow brighter than before. "Ambassador Tanaka, before you begin, you should understand what others have experienced," Shard of Memory said. His voice carried the weight of centuries. "I have witnessed 73 attempts over my lifetime. I will tell you about 3 of them." Keiko nodded. "Please. I should know what I'm facing." The first was Warlord Krax of the Krell Empire, 2,000 years ago. Krax had conquered 17 worlds through personal combat. He feared nothing in the physical universe. He approached the throne with confidence. Shard of Memory's light dimmed slightly, as if the memory brought him pain. At 5 steps, he began to slow. At 6, he was breathing heavily. At 7, he fell to his knees. When we pulled him away, he was screaming. He kept screaming for 3 days. When he finally stopped, he could only say one thing over and over. Ji-hoon felt cold. "What happened to him?" "He never recovered," Shard of Memory replied. "He spent his remaining years in isolation, refusing to speak to anyone. The great warrior died afraid of his own shadow." Keiko's expression did not change. "And the second? Queen Talmora of the Collective. She represented 17 billion minds joined together as one. She believed that a hive mind could withstand anything because no single consciousness could be broken. She made it to 9 steps." Shard of Memory's chimes sounded sad. The throne touched her mind. But it didn't just touch one consciousness. It touched all 17 billion at once. The feedback nearly destroyed the entire collective. It took them 50 years to fully recover. "And the third?" Keiko asked. "Unit 7 of the synthetic collective. Machines have no fear," they claimed. "No emotion to be manipulated, no trauma to exploit." Unit 7 was their most advanced model, built specifically to resist any form of mental attack. Shard of Memory gestured toward the throne. It made it to 9 steps. Then it simply stopped functioning. "We examined it afterward. There was no damage. No malfunction. Its systems were perfect. But it never activated again. As if something had reached inside and turned off whatever makes a being alive." The chamber had grown very quiet. Everyone was listening now. "Why are you telling me this?" Keiko asked. "To frighten me?" "No," Shard of Memory said softly. "To give you the respect of truth. This throne has broken warriors, shattered hive minds, and erased synthetic consciousness. Whatever guards it does not judge based on strength or technology. It judges based on something deeper. Something we do not understand." Keiko looked at the throne again. The blue light surrounding it seemed to pulse slowly, like breathing. "Then perhaps it's time someone understood," she said. The technicians signaled that they were ready. Keiko walked to the designated starting point, exactly 20 meters from the throne. The entire chamber watched in silence. Ji-hoon realized he was holding his breath. The broadcast began. Across the galaxy, billions of beings tuned in to watch. Some out of curiosity, some out of hope, many expecting to see another failure, another species humbled by the ancient mystery. Keiko took her first step forward. Nothing happened. She took another step, then another. At 5 steps, Ji-hoon saw several alien ambassadors' tents. This was where Warlord Krax had fallen. But Keiko continued walking at the same steady pace. At 7 steps, some of the monitoring equipment began showing unusual readings. Energy levels around the throne were increasing. The blue light grew brighter. Keiko kept walking. At 9 steps where the hive mind queen and the synthetic had failed, Keiko paused. Ji-hoon's heart nearly stopped. But Keiko wasn't stopping, because she was afraid. She had closed her eyes, and her expression had changed. She looked like she was listening to something. "What is she doing?" whispered a Vryn ambassador. "She's not fighting it," Shard of Memory said with wonder in his voice. "Everyone else fought against the throne's presence. She's accepting it." Keiko opened her eyes and continued walking. 10 steps. 11. 12. The chamber filled with shocked murmurs. Some ambassadors stood up from their seats. This had never happened before. At 15 steps, Keiko stopped again. This time, her expression showed strain. Whatever she was experiencing, it was not easy. But there was no fear in her eyes. Only determination. Ji-hoon wanted to run to her, to pull her back, but he forced himself to stay still. This was her choice. Her test. Keiko took a deep breath and kept moving forward. 16 steps. 17. 18. The blue light around the throne was now so bright that some of the aliens had to shield their eyes. But Ji-hoon kept watching, unable to look away. 19 steps. Keiko was now close enough to touch the throne. Her hand reached out slowly, trembling slightly. But still, she moved forward. Her fingers touched the throne's armrest. The entire chamber exploded with light. Ji-hoon threw up his arm to protect his eyes. The light was not just bright, it was everywhere, passing through walls and equipment and bodies as if they were made of glass. He could feel it washing over him, warm and strange and ancient. When the light faded, Keiko was still standing. Her hand remained on the throne. And the throne itself had changed. The material that had seemed uncertain before now glowed with internal light, pulsing in rhythm with Keiko's heartbeat. Then something even more impossible happened. The throne spoke. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It was not sound, exactly, but something deeper. It bypassed ears and spoke directly to the mind, to the soul, to whatever made a being conscious, and every species heard it in their own language. Every individual understood it perfectly. Even though the words themselves were older than any civilization. In the chamber, the message was simple. Just 3 words. The inheritors have returned. Keiko's legs gave out, and she fell to her knees beside the throne. Ji-hoon ran to her, followed by medical teams. But when he reached her, she was smiling. "It knows," she whispered. "It knows everything about us. Everything humanity has been. Everything we can become." She looked up at Ji-hoon with tears streaming down her face. "And it's been waiting. All this time. It's been waiting for us." Around them, the council chamber erupted in chaos. Ambassadors were shouting questions. Technology that had been dormant for millions of years suddenly activated. Panels on the walls lit up with symbols. The floor beneath the throne began to change, revealing mechanisms that had been hidden since before memory. And through it all, the throne continued to glow, pulsing with ancient purpose. Shard of Memory floated to the center of the room, his crystalline voice cutting through the chaos. "By the laws of the ancient test, humanity has succeeded where all others failed. The throne has accepted them." He turned to face Keiko, who was being helped to her feet by Ji-hoon. "Ambassador Tanaka," Shard of Memory said formally, "welcome to the Galactic Council, and may the stars help us all understand what this means." But Keiko was not looking at him. She was looking at the throne, where new information was beginning to display on surfaces that had been blank for millions of years. Data about Earth, about humanity, about a species called the Architects, who had vanished long before humans ever existed, and about what they had left behind for their inheritors to find. The council chamber had become a place of revelation. For 3 days, Teams of scientists and historians worked around the throne, accessing information that had been locked away for millions of years. The throne had opened like a flower, revealing data systems that functioned on principles no one understood, but everyone could somehow read. Keiko had not left the chamber in all that time. She sat on the floor near the throne with a portable terminal, reading through files that rewrote everything the galaxy thought it knew about history. Ji-hoon brought her food and water, which she accepted without looking away from her screen. "You need to rest," he told her gently. "I will rest when we understand," Keiko replied. Her voice was hoarse from lack of sleep, but her eyes were bright with purpose. "Ji-hoon, you need to read this. Everyone needs to read this." "Ji-hoon." She handed him the terminal. The file was titled simply, "The Architect's Final Record." Ji-hoon began to read. And the story that unfolded was both beautiful and tragic. The architects had been the first species in the galaxy to achieve true civilization. They evolved on Earth 400 million years ago, in an era when most other worlds were still developing single-celled life. They were not like any species that existed now. The records showed beings of pure energy that could take physical form when needed, creatures that thought in dimensions beyond the three that other species understood. They spread across the galaxy quickly. Not conquering, but exploring, building, learning. They created wonders that still existed in ruins on dead worlds. Structures that bent space, gardens that grew across entire planets, libraries that stored information in the fabric of reality itself. But as they grew more powerful, they began to face a problem. They were too perfect, too advanced. They had solved every challenge they could find. And without challenges, they stopped evolving, stopped adapting, stopped growing. "They were dying," Keiko said softly as Ji-hoon read. "Not from disease or war, from stagnation. They had achieved everything they could achieve with what they were, and they realized that without change, without the pressure to adapt, they would eventually fade away completely." The records showed the architects' debates. Millions of years of discussion about how to solve their problem. Some suggested creating artificial challenges. Others proposed finding new dimensions to explore. But one group had a different idea, a radical idea. "They decided to start over," Ji-hoon said, reading the words with growing amazement. "They decided to erase everything they had built and let evolution begin again." "Not everywhere," Keiko corrected. "Just on Earth, their home world. They wanted to create something new, something that had what they had lost, the ability to adapt and grow through struggle." The files showed what the architects had done. They had carefully dismantled their civilization, storing their knowledge in hidden locations across the galaxy. Then, they had reset Earth, wiped it clean of advanced life and seeded it with new organisms, primitive creatures that would have to fight and struggle and adapt to survive. But they did not simply let nature take its random course. The architects had engineered Earth itself to be a crucible. They increased the gravity slightly. They made the climate unstable, swinging between ice ages and warm periods. They made evolution more aggressive, more competitive, more demanding than on any other world. They created what the galaxy now called a death world. "This is insane," Ji-hoon whispered. "They deliberately made Earth harder to live on?" They wanted to forge a species that could survive anything," Keiko said. "A species that would never become stagnant, because they would always be adapting to new challenges. They wanted their inheritors to have the one thing they had lost, the drive to overcome, to persist, to keep growing no matter what." Dr. Min-ji Choi, the human xenobiologist, had been reading over Ji-hoon's shoulder. She was a small woman in her 40s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Now she spoke up, her voice filled with wonder. "That explains so much about human evolution. We always wondered why Earth was so harsh compared to other worlds. Why our gravity is higher than average. Why our climate has been so unstable. Why Earth has had 5 major extinction events. We thought we were unlucky. She laughed, a sound without humor. We weren't unlucky. We were being tested. For millions of years. But the architects didn't just leave Earth and hope for the best, Keiko continued. They left the throne, a test to see if their plan had worked. They programmed it to recognize certain traits. Not strength, not intelligence alone, but adaptability. The ability to face fear and keep moving forward, the willingness to accept truth even when it's overwhelming. That's why the others failed, Ji-hoon said slowly. The warrior failed because he relied only on strength. The hive mind failed because they thought unity alone was enough. The synthetic failed because it had no capacity to grow beyond its programming. Exactly, Keiko said. The throne was looking for something specific. A species that had been forged through endless adaptation. A species that knew how to face the impossible and find a way forward. She smiled tiredly. It was looking for humans. Shard of Memory joined them, his crystalline form chiming softly. Behind him came ambassadors from every major species in the council. The chamber was crowded now, everyone wanting to understand the revelation. There is more, Shard of Memory said. The throne has revealed the locations of architect facilities across the galaxy. Hundreds of them. Markitect, libraries, research stations, terraforming equipment. And something else. He pulled up a hologram showing Sector 3 Terra. Dozens of points were marked in red within it. What are those? Ji-hoon asked. Protected worlds, Minji breathed. Species under development. The architects weren't just running an experiment on Earth. They set up protection protocols for other developing species. Worlds that no one was allowed to colonize or interfere with. That's why Sector 3 Terra was forbidden, and now humans have access to all of it, said Ambassador Vrel of the Krell Empire. The large reptilian being looked troubled. The architects left you their entire legacy, their technology, their territory, their responsibilities. This is unprecedented, added Ambassador Talnus of the Tal Federation, a being that resembled a floating jellyfish. By the laws of inheritance, humanity now has claim to everything the architects left behind. That includes voting rights in this council equal to the oldest civilizations. Authority over Sector 3, Terra. Access to technology that could make you the most powerful species in the galaxy. The chamber fell silent. Every ambassador was looking at Keiko now. Some with hope. Some with fear. Some with barely disguised anger. You cannot possibly accept this, said Unit 12 of the Synthetic Collective. Your species has been in space for only 3 years. You cannot manage galactic sectors. You cannot be responsible for dozens of developing civilizations. They might be dangerous, added Ambassador Vrel. Humans come from a death world. A world that was deliberately made harsh. What if that made them aggressive? Violent? What if we are giving weapons to a species that will use them to conquer, rather than protect? Keiko stood slowly. She looked exhausted, but her voice was steady and clear. You are right to be concerned, she said. Humans are not perfect. We have a long history of violence, of war, of making terrible mistakes. Our own planet still struggles with conflicts we cannot fully resolve. We are young and uncertain, and sometimes frightened of what we don't understand. She walked to the throne and placed her hand on it again. The blue light pulsed gently, but the architects chose to give us this gift, not because we are perfect, but because we know how to adapt, how to learn, how to face our failures, and try to do better. That is what 400 million years of evolution on a death world teaches you, not that you will never fall, but that you will always try to get back up. 2. She turned back to face the council. Humanity accepts the architect's legacy. We will take responsibility for Sector 3 Terra and the species under protection there. We will honor the ancient treaties and agreements. But we have one condition. You are not in a position to make conditions, Ambassador Vrel said sharply. The throne has chosen you. The legacy is yours by right. Then we give up that right, Keiko said calmly. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Shard of Memory chimed loudly for silence. Explain yourself, Ambassador, he said. Keiko looked at the throne, then at Ji-hoon, then at the gathered ambassadors. We will not sit in the throne, she said. We will not claim authority over other species. The architects failed because they became too powerful, too removed from those they protected. They enforced peace through strength rather than understanding. We will not repeat their mistake. She gestured to the empty throne. This will remain empty. As a reminder that no species should rule over others. Humanity will accept stewardship of Sector 3 Terra. But we will work with the Council, not above it. We will share the architect's technology, not hoard it. We will guide the protected species, not control them. And if the Council disagrees, Ambassador Vrel asked, if we insist you take the full authority that is your inheritance? Keiko smiled. It was not a happy smile, but a determined one. Then we will refuse the entire legacy. We will return to Earth and stay in our single solar system. Because we learned something else from 400 million years of evolution on a death world. We learned that power without wisdom is just another form of extinction. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every ambassador. We are the inheritors, but we choose to inherit responsibility, not dominion. Is that acceptable? The silence that followed was long and heavy. Then, slowly, Shard of Memory began to chime. One by one, other ambassadors added their own sounds of agreement. The Council accepts humanity's terms, Shard of Memory said finally. The throne will remain empty, but you will take your place among us as equals and as stewards of the architect's legacy. Keiko bowed deeply. Thank you. We will try to be worthy of that trust. As the chamber began to clear, Ji-hoon approached Keiko. That was a risk, he said quietly. Turning down that much power. No, Keiko replied. Accepting it would have been the risk. Power like that changes you. And we've only just started to learn who we are in this galaxy. We need time to grow into this role, not be crushed by the weight of it. She looked at the glowing throne one more time. The architects left us a test. And I think we just passed the real one, knowing when to say no. 6 months after Keiko touched the throne, humanity began the work of understanding what they had inherited. It was not easy. The architect's legacy was vast and complicated, spread across hundreds of star systems and involving responsibilities that had existed for millions of years. Captain Ji-hoon Park now commanded a small fleet of human ships assigned to explore Sector 3 Terra. His flagship, the Times Persistence Asterisk, had been joined by 5 other vessels, crewed by scientists, diplomats, and explorers. They were mapping the region, cataloging the architect facilities, and trying to understand the scope of their new role. This is overwhelming, said Lieutenant Kim Soo-jin as she reviewed their latest survey data. She was young for her position, barely 25, with bright eyes and a quick mind. We've found 37 architect installations so far, and we've only surveyed 10% of the sector. The architects were thorough. Ji-hoon agreed. He stood on the bridge of the Times, Persistence Asterisk, looking at the star map that dominated the main screen. Red dots marked protected worlds, blue dots marked architect facilities. Green dots marked areas that still needed exploration. There was more green than anything else. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Ambassador Tanaka, the communications officer reported. She's requesting a conference. Put her through. Keiko's face appeared on the screen. She was in her office at the council chambers, surrounded by data terminals, and looking as tired as Ji-hoon felt. Captain Park, I need you to redirect to the Althea system, she said without preamble. We've identified it as one of the protected worlds. The Council wants a full report on its status before we establish protocols. Understood. Any particular concerns? The usual. Some council members still don't trust humans to handle this responsibility. They're looking for reasons to say we can't manage it. Keiko rubbed her eyes. Ambassador Vrel has been particularly vocal. He's calling for the council to assume direct control of Sector 3 Terra, with humans only serving as advisors. Ji-hoon frowned. 6 months, and they're already trying to take it away. Not take it away, but they're questioning whether we gave up too much power, whether we made ourselves too weak by refusing the throne's full authority. She smiled slightly. Which is why I need you to show them we can handle this. Find out what's on Althea. Document it properly. Do everything by the council regulations. We won't let you down, Ji-hoon promised. 3 days later, the Persistence Times arrived in the Althea system. It was a small yellow star with 6 planets. The 4th planet registered as having an oxygen atmosphere and active biosigns. Taking us into orbit, reported the helm officer. As they approached, the sensor data became more detailed. Althea 4 was covered in vast forests and deep oceans. The biosigns indicated millions of different species, and there was one more reading that made everyone on the bridge stop and stare. Captain, said Dr. Minji Choi, who had joined the expedition as Chief Science Officer. I'm detecting structures on the surface. Artificial structures. A civilization? Ji-hoon asked. Primitive one. Stone Age, maybe early Bronze Age. But yes, definitely intelligent life. Minji pulled up images from the sensors. They showed villages near rivers, cleared farmland, and what might be ceremonial buildings. So this is one of the species the architects were protecting, Ji-hoon said quietly. They're still developing, still finding their way. According to the records, there are 15 species like this in Sector 3 Terra, Minji said. All at various stages of development. The architect's protection protocols kept other species from interfering with them. Now that responsibility falls to us. Lieutenant Kim spoke up from her station. Captain, I'm detecting something else. An orbital structure. It's in a stable position over the planet's north pole. Show me. The image that appeared was breathtaking. A massive station hung in space, easily 10 kilometers across. It was built in a style that matched other architect facilities, smooth curves, materials that seemed to shift between metal and crystal, and a sense of impossible grace in its design. That's a monitoring station, Minji said, reading her instruments. It's been watching over this planet for 40 million years. 40 million? Ji-hoon repeated. The architects set it up when this species was still small, tree-dwelling creatures. They've been protected all this time, developing naturally without interference. The station has defense systems to prevent anyone from getting too close to the planet. Can we access the station? I believe so. The throne gave us access codes. Let me try. A few moments later, the station responded to their signal. Ancient systems powered up, and a docking port opened to receive them. I'm taking a team over, Ji-hoon decided. Minji, Kim, and a security detail. The rest of you maintain orbit and continue monitoring the planet. If anything goes wrong, report to Ambassador Tanaka immediately. The shuttle trip to the station was short but tense. As they approached, Ji-hoon could see how old the structure was. Parts of it were covered in dust from countless meteor impacts. Other sections showed signs of self-repair, as if the station had been maintaining itself for all these millions of years. They docked and entered through an airlock that cycled smoothly despite its age. Inside, the station was dark until they entered. Then lights began activating, responding to their presence. The air is breathable, Minji reported, checking her instruments. Temperature is comfortable. This place is ready for visitors. They walked through corridors that curved gently, following a map that appeared on Minji's datapad. The station seemed to know where they wanted to go. It guided them to a central chamber that took Ji-hoon's breath away. The chamber was a garden, a real garden, growing inside the station. Trees stretched toward a ceiling that somehow glowed with artificial sunlight. Flowers bloomed in colors Ji-hoon had never seen. Water ran in streams between carefully arranged stones. Birds sang from branches, or things that were Like birds, but not quite the same. This is impossible, whispered Lieutenant Kim. How has this survived for 40 million years? Architect technology, Minji said with wonder in her voice. This isn't just a garden. It's a genetic library. Look at the plaques. She pointed to small markers next to different plants. Each plaque showed information about the species, where it came from, and when it had gone extinct. These are plants from worlds the architects couldn't save, Minji realized. Planets that died from natural disasters or cosmic events. They preserved what they could, kept it here, kept it alive. All this time, Ji-hoon walked deeper into the garden, his boots quiet on the soft path. He found a section dedicated to Earth species. Plants that had gone extinct long before humans existed. Dinosaurs that had been preserved in genetic storage. Fish from oceans that had dried up millions of years ago. They were gardeners, he said softly. There's more, Minji called. She had found a terminal built into a tree trunk. I'm accessing the station's logs. Oh no. What is it? The architects didn't just monitor developing species. They intervened when necessary. Not to control them, but to save them. She pulled up records that showed dozens of incidents. Asteroid deflections. Climate stabilization during extreme events. Discrete removal of invasive species from other worlds that would have destroyed local evolution. They protected them, Lieutenant Kim said. Yes. But look at the later entries. Minji's voice became heavy. The architects became too good at it. They removed every challenge. They made survival too easy for the species they protected, and those species stopped developing, stopped adapting. They became dependent on the protection, never knowing it was there. Ji-hoon looked at the records. Species after species that had reached a certain level of development and then stopped, frozen at early agricultural stages or simple tool use, never progressing further because they never needed to overcome major obstacles. The architects realized their mistake, Minji continued. They were doing to other species what had happened to them. They were making them too safe, too protected. They were taking away the challenges that drive evolution. That's why they changed their approach, Ji-hoon said, understanding dawning. Earth wasn't just a test for humanity. It was them learning from their mistakes. They made Earth hard, specifically because they learned that struggle creates growth. Exactly, Minji confirmed. The later entries show them reducing their interventions, letting natural selection work, only stepping in for truly catastrophic events. They were trying to find a balance between protection and allowing challenge. Lieutenant Kim had moved to a different section of the garden. Sirs, you need to see this. They joined her at what appeared to be a memorial. It was a simple stone wall, covered with names. Millions of names, in thousands of different languages and scripts. What is this? Ji-hoon asked. I think it's a record of species that went extinct despite the architect's efforts, Kim said quietly. Species they couldn't save, couldn't protect, failed to preserve. Minji ran her hand over the names, her eyes filled with sadness. This is why they left. This is their greatest regret. Not that they became powerful, but that they couldn't save everyone. That despite all their technology and knowledge, death and extinction still found a way. Ji-hoon stood in the garden, surrounded by preserved life from 1,000 dead worlds, and felt the weight of what humanity had inherited. This wasn't just about managing territory or accessing technology. It was about understanding a fundamental truth. The architects had been powerful beyond measure. They had shaped galaxies and preserved life across millions of years. But they had learned something that broke them. That protection alone wasn't enough. That safety without challenge led to stagnation. That trying to save everyone from every hardship just created a different kind of death. We need to report this to Ambassador Tanaka, he said finally. The Council needs to understand. This isn't about claiming power or authority. It's about finding that balance. Protecting without smothering, guiding without controlling. Do you think they'll understand? Kim asked. Ji-hoon looked at the memorial wall. At all those names of species that had died despite the architect's best efforts. I hope so, he said. Because if we get this wrong, we'll fail just like they did. We'll either protect too much and create dependent civilizations that never grow, or we'll fail to protect enough and watch them die. He touched one of the names on the wall, feeling the weight of 40 million years of responsibility. The architects gave us this legacy not because we're strong enough to carry it, but because we know what it's like to struggle, to fail, to have to fight for every step forward. That's the real inheritance, the understanding that sometimes the hardest thing to do is knowing when to help and when to let someone face their challenges alone. They returned to the times. Persistence times in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. As they prepared to leave the Althea system, Ji-hoon sent a detailed report to Keiko, not just about the station and the garden, but about the lesson it taught. Humanity's test wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. The throne had accepted them, but now came the hard part, proving they could inherit the architect's responsibility without repeating their mistakes. The empty throne in the council chamber was more than just a symbol. It was a reminder that the greatest power wasn't in ruling over others, but in knowing when to step back and let them find their own path. The emergency session of the Galactic Council began with Ambassador Vrel standing at the central podium, his massive reptilian form radiating anger. Behind him on the main display was footage from the Althea system, specifically footage of the garden station and its memorial wall. This is what humans have found, Vrel declared to the assembled council. A record of failure. The architects, for all their power, could not fulfill their duty. Thousands of species died under their watch. And now, we are trusting humans, a species barely 3 years in space, to take on this same responsibility? Keiko sat in the human delegation section, listening calmly. She had expected this. Ji-hoon's report had been honest about what they had found, and she knew some council members would use it as ammunition. The architects failed because they were alone, Vrel continued. They tried to protect thousands of developing species across the galaxy with no help, no oversight, no checks on their decisions. Are we going to repeat that mistake? Are we going to let one species, however well-meaning, control the fate of 15 civilizations? Murmurs of agreement came from several delegations. Vrel pressed his advantage. I propose the Council take direct control of Sector 3 Terra. Humans can maintain a supervisory role, but major decisions should require Council approval. This is too important to leave to a single species. Before Keiko could respond, Shard of Memory chimed loudly, the ancient crystalline being floated to the center of the chamber, his form glowing with authority that came from 10,000 years of experience. Ambassador Vrel makes valid points, Shard of Memory said. But he misunderstands both the architect's failure and humanity's inheritance. May I speak, Ambassador Tanaka? Keiko nodded. Shard of Memory's voice filled the chamber. I am old enough to remember when we first discovered architect ruins. We found their technologies and marveled at their power. We read their records and wondered how such an advanced civilization could simply vanish. Now, we know the answer. He gestured to the display showing the memorial wall. The architects did not fail because they were weak or incompetent. They failed because they became trapped by their own success. They saved so many species that they forgot the most important lesson that life needs challenge to grow. That safety without struggle creates stagnation. Which proves my point, Vrel interjected. Humans are from a death world. They know only struggle and conflict. How can we trust them to find the balance between protection and freedom? Because they understand both sides, said a new voice. Everyone turned. Ambassador Talathus of the Preserve Alliance had stood up. The Preserve Alliance represented 12 species who had been contacted by more advanced civilizations and helped to develop peacefully. Talathus was a small, bird-like being with iridescent feathers. My species was once where the Altheans are now, Telethus said softly. We were primitive, developing slowly, unaware that we were being watched. When we achieved spaceflight, we were contacted by the Vrin Collective. Instead, they offered friendship and guidance, while letting us make our own mistakes. She looked directly at Vrel. That balance between helping and allowing independence is the hardest thing to maintain. My species survived because the Vren understood something important. Protection is not the same as control. Help is not the same as dependency. And humans understand this? Vrel challenged. They do, Telethus replied. Because they lived it. Humans spent their entire evolutionary history fighting for survival. They know what it costs to struggle, but they also know what it means to help each other despite that struggle. Their history is full of both competition and cooperation, war and peace, independence and community. Keiko felt a surge of gratitude toward Telethus, but she knew she needed to speak for humanity herself. She stood and walked to the podium. Ambassador Vrel is right to question us, she said clearly. We are young. We are inexperienced. We will make mistakes. But that is exactly why the throne chose us. She pulled up her own data on the main display information from the throne's archives. The architects didn't fail because they were alone. They failed because they became convinced they knew what was best for everyone. They had solved all their own problems, so they thought they could solve everyone else's problems too. But every species is different. Every civilization needs to find its own path. Keiko changed the display to show humanity's own history. We humans have tried to control and protect each other many times throughout our history. We have built empires that claim to bring order and civilization. We have established systems that promised safety and prosperity. And time and again, we learned that you cannot force people to be free. You cannot create growth by removing all challenge. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of different ambassadors. We are not perfect. Our world is still full of conflicts we cannot resolve. We still struggle with finding the balance between helping and controlling. But that struggle is what makes us suited for this role. We know we don't have all the answers. We know we need guidance and oversight. Then you agree the Council should control Sector 3 Terra? Vrel said triumphantly. No, Keiko replied firmly. Because Council control would just repeat the architect's mistake. It would centralize power and remove the diversity of perspective that makes the galaxy strong. But I have a different proposal. She pulled up a new document on the display. Humanity will accept full responsibility for Sector 3 Terra, as the throne determined. But we will not exercise that responsibility alone. We propose creating the Stewardship Committee, a group of species who have experience with first contact, cultural development, and careful intervention. The document showed names and roles. The Vrin Collective, who had helped the preserved species develop peacefully. The Tal themselves, who understood what it meant to receive help without losing independence. The Synthetic Collective, who could provide objective analysis without emotional bias. And yes, even the Krell Empire, who understood strength and when it should be used. This committee will advise humanity on decisions regarding the protected species. They will have access to all architect facilities in Sector 3 Terra. They will be able to review our actions and recommend changes. But the final authority will remain with humanity, because that is what the throne determined. So you want oversight but not control, Shard of Memory said thoughtfully. Exactly. We want to learn from the architect's mistakes without repeating them. They were alone. We don't have to be. Keiko looked directly at Vrel. You are right that one species shouldn't have absolute power over others. But the answer isn't to take that power away and give it to the Council. The answer is to build a system where power is checked by wisdom and authority is balanced by responsibility. Vrel was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, and his voice was less hostile than before. And if the committee disagrees with humanity's decisions? What then? Then we discuss it. We debate it. We find compromise. Keiko smiled slightly. Isn't that what the council is supposed to be about? Different perspectives working together to find the best path forward? You realize this will be difficult, said Ambassador Talnus of the Tal Federation. The protected species will develop at different rates. They will face different challenges. There will be times when the right choice is unclear. Yes, Keiko agreed. Which is why we need diverse voices making these decisions. The architects tried to be perfect. We will try to be good enough. And hopefully, by working together, we can achieve what they could not: protection without dominance, guidance without control. Dr. Minji Choi, who had been sitting quietly in the human delegation, stood up. May I add something? Keiko nodded. Minji walked to the podium, carrying a small container. During our exploration of the garden station, I took a sample with the station's permission. I'd like to show you something. She opened the container. Inside was a small plant with delicate blue flowers. This is a species from a planet called Viridian 3. That planet was destroyed by a supernova 8 million years ago. The architects saved genetic samples and kept them alive in the garden station. This plant should not exist anymore. But it does. She held it up so everyone could see. The architects may have failed to save every species, but they saved what they could. They preserved life that would have been completely lost. That memorial wall isn't just a record of failure. It's also a record of effort, of caring enough to try even when success wasn't guaranteed. Minji looked around the chamber. Humanity isn't asking to be perfect. We're asking for the chance to try, to preserve what we can, to protect what needs protecting, to help those who need helping. And when we fail because we will fail, sometimes we want to fail while trying our best, with the guidance of those who have more experience than we do. The chamber fell quiet. Then Shard of Memory began to chime, a sound of approval that echoed off the ancient walls. Ambassador Tanaka, humanity's proposal is wise, he said. I support the creation of the Stewardship Committee. Those who learn from history should be trusted to help write the next chapter. One by one, other ambassadors voiced their agreement. Even Vrel, after a long pause, gave a reluctant nod. Very well, he said. But humanity will be watched closely. The first sign that you are failing in this duty, and this agreement, will be reconsidered. That is fair, Keiko replied. We would not want it any other way. 3 months later, Captain Ji-hoon Park stood on the bridge of the Times, Persistence Times, with a very different mission than his first visit to Althea. The Stewardship Committee had approved a proposal to place monitoring satellites around all 15 protected worlds, not to control them, but to ensure no unauthorized contact occurred while they developed naturally. Satellites deployed, reported Lieutenant Kim. All systems green. The protection grid is active. Good, Ji-hoon said. He looked at the planet below, where primitive beings were beginning to develop agriculture and early writing. They had no idea they were being watched over, no idea that their development was being protected by ancient protocols and modern cooperation. Maybe that was how it should be. The best protection was the kind you never knew you needed. Captain, incoming message from the Council, the communications officer reported. It's Ambassador Tanaka. She says the Stewardship Committee has identified another protected species that needs our attention. Sending coordinates now. Ji-hoon smiled. The work was just beginning. 15 species to protect and guide. Hundreds of architect facilities to understand and maintain. A balance to find between helping and allowing independence. It was overwhelming. It was impossible. It was exactly the kind of challenge that humanity had spent 400 million years learning how to face. Set course for the new coordinates, he ordered. And someone send a message to Earth. Tell them the inheritors are getting to work. Far away, in the council chamber, the throne sat empty, as it had for millions of years. But now it served a different purpose. It was no longer a test of worthiness or a symbol of power. It was a reminder of a lesson learned through failure and success across deep time. No one should sit above others. No species should claim absolute authority. No civilization should believe they alone have all the answers. The throne remained empty. And in that emptiness, humanity found something more valuable than power. They found purpose. They found responsibility. They found a way to inherit the architect's legacy without repeating their mistakes. The inheritors had returned, not to rule, not to dominate, but to serve, to protect, and to remember that the greatest strength comes not from sitting in a throne, but from knowing when that throne should remain empty. And across the galaxy, in gardens that had waited millions of years for someone to understand their meaning, preserved life bloomed in colors that no one had seen in ages. The architect's work continued, not through the power of one perfect species, but through the cooperation of many imperfect ones who chose to try together. That, in the end, was the real test. And humanity, with all their flaws and struggles and hard-won wisdom from a death world that taught them to always get back up, had finally passed it.